Yerushalayim as a little boy. Whatever, he moved to America after he got married. Lived in America for about 50 years, and then he retired, moved back to Israel. And I was a Shiva Bocher. The first time I went to his house, so he said something to me, thank you very much. He said something to me which made a very, very strong impression. I come to the house, can I give you a drink? Can I offer you a coffee? That's the way we say it. The way they said it in Yerushalayim 100 years ago, I'm already talking about this. This is a story that happened 35 years ago, and he was close to 80 at the time, so we're talking about 100 years ago. He said, maybe you'll leave over a bracha in the house. Right? Notice if I drink a coffee, I have to make a bracha, right? So what ends up happening is that I benefited you because I left a bracha in your house. Instead of saying, do you want to eat? Right? Which is like almost like a vulgar thing that you say, do you want to eat? Who's it all about? Do us a favor and leave a bracha in our house. It's a beautiful way of expressing an idea that, not everything has to be said. Some things can be left to be understood. But anyways, I appreciate very much the offer, and thank you for the coffee. Right? That's basically.
The only difference is, Bradley didn't ask you for a bracha for the show.
Yeah. Well, as I said this over once, I said it again that there's the minig by the Chassidim is that the Rebbe gets to be something by every bris. So like he owns the cartel on that thing. Why does the Rebbe get to do it? The Ramon Shulchan Aruch says that if a person is a tzaddik once, he shouldn't do it again. And the reason why is to spread around the wealth. You already got your million. Let somebody else have a million. You can only win the lottery once. By the way, I'm a rich man today, much richer than I was 2 days ago. Because when I was in America, there was a craze. There was a $40 million lottery ticket, which many people lost $1 on. I didn't lose that $1. So I'm richer than I was 2 days ago. Okay? But anyways, that's it.
How do you open this? Just like that.
Alan is a serviceman. That's all. That's it. He's in all service. Anyways, there was a subject in this week's Parsha which I wanted to mention, and there's an English expression that good fences make good neighbors. Okay, I don't think what?
It's very English.
Yeah, so that's what we discussed. This idea. Is that a Torah idea or not a Torah idea, right? A lot of times there's a lot of things that make sense, but they make sense based on a certain reality which people find themselves in. And is it really true or it's not really true? And this is a question which in my opinion has a lot of a great ripple effect in many, many areas. I'll just start off with the following almost acidic, pithy remark from Rabban Leib Shteiman, which is, I say, really a horrible line to say, but it's a reality. He was a master at encompassing much of human nature in a few short words. There was a man who needed to move into larger quarters, and he had a choice. Either he could extend his apartment, make it larger, or he could buy a bigger apartment. So he went to ask some people. They ask such a question, they just do whatever the wife says. Or some people, whatever the wife says, they do the opposite. And some people even come to an agreement with their wife. There's a lot of different shittas in how you would deal with these issues. But this man had this novel idea. You have a major question in life. So he asked Das Torah. So he went to Rabban Leib and he asked Rabban Leib, what should I do? Should I extend or should I move? So Rabban Leib said, move. So he said, the building that I have has very good neighbors. I'm going to move into a different building. Maybe I'm not going to have such good neighbors. So the Baruch Leib said, they're only good neighbors until you started to build. I don't think we need a Pirush on that, right? So good fences make good neighbors has to be qualified. The Chassam Sofer in this week's Parsha makes a comment based on a Ramban that the counting that was done in this week's Parsha was the counting pre-entry to Eretz Yisrael before the Chet of the Egel. In Parshas Pinchas, there's a counting again 40 years later after the Chet of the Egel, pre-entering Eretz Yisrael. Note the exact same counting happened again 40 years later, and he makes an observation of a very peculiar difference. In this week's Parsha, it just has the Shvatim, and it doesn't go down into the particular families, the Chanuchi, Lefali, Lechavroini. It just has the Shevet, and that's the end of it. And in Pinchas, when it counts, again, the same counting, and you get the same number, it has it regimented into smaller groupings, subcategories as well. And the question that Chassam Sofer asks is why here did we do it one way, and there we did it a different way? Why? If it's the same counting for the same reason, why one time is it done one way and one time it's done another way? And he answers with those who are familiar with the Chassam Sofer, the Sefer is full of Kabbalah in hidden ways. It's not hidden to me. Whenever I don't understand, I just attribute it must be some Kabbalistic idea. But he has all kinds of ideas which are, and he proves everything from Sukkim, from Gematrias. He says there was a difference. When Klal Yisrael would have gone in before the Chet of the Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu would have been the one that brought them in. After the Chet of the Egel, and Moshe Rabbeinu's personal Chet of Mei Meriva, they went in with Yeshua. So their entrance into Eretz Yisrael wasn't just a question of before the Chet Egel and afterwards. It was a difference in the leadership. The leadership changed. Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership was a leadership which is called Aspaklaria Meira, a very clear leadership, and no other Novi was able to achieve that level of clarity in his leadership, and therefore he says that it was necessary to have sub-families. If we would have had an entrance into Eretz Yisrael with just Moshe Rabbeinu, it would have been clearly defined our purpose, and we wouldn't have to have subgroupings to know where we stand. When we go in with Yoshua, not with Moshe Rabbeinu, so then it becomes necessary to have these subgroupings. That's the end of what he says. And he goes on to explain that what I call it an esoteric way. What does it all mean? But what does it mean for us? It's a very nice word, all the math works, but what does it mean? If I have to hang up, I go into a shul and I see signs on the wall, no talking during davening. What does it say? In this shul we talk. Right? That's always what it says, right? Right? No, that's what it says, right? Why? Because if I have to hang up that sign, so that means that there's obviously a problem. That problem has to be addressed. I know I live in Yerushalayim, and therefore I have the opportunity that people in Beit Shemesh don't have it in such a spontaneous way to go to the Kaisel, not to go to the Kaisel. And sometimes here that there's a lot of soldiers at the Kaisel. So when there's a lot of soldiers at the Kaisel, that means that it's safer or it's not safer. The reason why there's a lot of soldiers there is because there is an undercurrent of danger, and therefore to neutralize that undercurrent, then you need to have protection. I was on my plane coming here to Eretz Yisrael. I was sitting next to some people from, get this, a small city next to It's called Salt Lake City. Understand? Salt Lake City is like a needle, and this is a nano needle in America, some little village. And the person was talking about how times have changed and the safety, you know. So I said, so what is it like in the city nowadays? You know, they're telling me how carefree it is. You know, people live in the city and nowadays, those who have children here are not aware of what they're blessed with, that they can let their kids go someplace at night. That's an accepted thing. Those who come from places like South Africa, right? So where do you let your kids go at night? Yeah, and even that's a dangerous deal, right? But no, it depends where you live. What's called dangerous. The more rules that you have, that means the more problems that you have. What is this issue? Why is that so? And how are you really supposed to change this? This is something which we really all know. We need what's called an education. The education and rules are not one of the same. If you have a whole bunch of rules, so now you get it. They don't get it. Not only that, I'll just mention, this is a personal observation. The educational system in America and the educational system in Eretz Yisrael are based, in my opinion, on different principles of teaching. When I came to Eretz Yisrael many years ago, there was a telephone box with asimonim that you put in, which are some kind of what are those computer coins called? What are they called?
Bitcoins.
Bitcoins, yeah, some kind of bitcoins or something like that. And you would take these. They looked like the size of a dime, and they had a hole in the middle, and you put them into the machine. And your strongest feeling that you made in a day is that you shouldn't lose that asimon, right? And if it didn't get hit the side of the phone, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, well this is before telecards. This is like in the olden days. We had these asimonim, and the expression in Ivrit is anafal asimon. I don't know if you know that expression. That expression is an archaic expression because nafal asimon doesn't make any sense nowadays. But it used to be that asimon would hang someplace and sometimes didn't fall into the right slot. And finally, when it got to where it was going, nafal asimon, that means you got it. I say in English, you got it. That means nafal asimon. That's where it comes from. That expression. So in this country, the teaching is done, yeah, basically. That's what they say?
Yeah, we have in English.
Where was that for a telephone?
No, it's,
where did it fall?
I think the penny dropped is actually the connotation is, I think they used to have Sheratim.
No, okay.
And that would enable the daughter.
Okay, it's the same idea, but obviously,
spend a penny.
So obviously what was going on is that the mechanism didn't always work. Right? So when you finally got it, you know, it worked, right? It clicked, as they would say, you know, right? That's the same difference, right? At any rate, so the teachings and done in this country are done by rote. You do something by rote enough time, so eventually you get it. I have an uncle who's a professor of philosophy. Got that? At Hebrew University. This one of his jobs is head of the department, actually, in philosophy at Hebrew University. And he said the first semester that he gave an exam, one of the students wrote on the bottom of the test, if we were supposed to have to think in order to answer the questions, you should have warned us in advance. Okay, this is a philosophy professor, you understand? And in America, the bedrock of teaching is understanding, not repetition. There's two different approaches to teaching, and this is not we're not discussing right now how to teach and how not to. But it's two different ways of doing things. Rules. The more rules that you have, you lose the forest for the trees. Just don't get it, because you're so busy following the rules that you just don't realize what's going on. If you have a clear understanding of what's doing, everything works out the way it's supposed to work out. When you have a Moshe Rabbeinu who's leading Klal Yisrael, you don't need so many directions of where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, what your job is. When you don't have such clear leadership, so then a person is lacking the ability to know what he needs to do, and therefore he has to have smaller department, he has to have he has to have a smaller amount. So, now when we ask, good fences make good neighbors, really that's a horrible thought. What it means is that if we wouldn't have fences, we'd be at each other's throats all the time. So yes, if the bottom line is that I'll use the word, we're cannibals, we're trying to swallow each other up alive, right? So then the good fences make good neighbors. Those strong fences, that's what they do. But if we would understand Ish Yisrael Yomer Chazak, so then it wouldn't be necessary. When I was a child, we moved from one neighborhood to another. The neighborhood which I lived in when I was a small child, I think I moved when I was 8, but when I was a small child, was technically in the city of Detroit. And we had a backyard, and that backyard had a fence around it, and my neighbor's yard had a fence around it. Each backyard had a fence around it. Then we moved to the suburbs. Now, the most important part of moving to the suburbs, as far as I was concerned, is that there were no fences in the backyards, and we used to play baseball 3 yards long. Noah's all, we played together, and there was no fences, and we got along great, right? Which is better? I want to tell you what happened.
Fences are better.
What?
Fences are better.
Because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Right. So what that means, that's only when you have that undercurrent that's going on, right? That's exactly what happened. There was actually a question over there. Somebody wanted another piece of the side, and they bought off the other fellow, and it became like a whole scuffle over, what I call utterly ridiculous. What's called utterly ridiculous? The first fight in the world was between Cain and Hevel, right? There isn't enough for me here. That's what they were fighting about, right? Just think about that. I was just like thinking about, I was traveling yesterday, I was over the ocean. There's not enough water for me, I could use some more. I need the Pacific also. This Atlantic is just like, minuscule. Anyways, so this is this idea that good fences make good neighbors, strong fences make good neighbors, whatever you want to call it, that's based on a fallacy, a insecureness, an ununderstanding in human nature. Because of that, we need to have something to counter a negativity in human nature. If we would be as we should be, so then those fences make things worse, less useful, because we don't have the ability to manipulate things to a greater degree. But what happens is when people manipulate things to a greater degree, they do injustices, and therefore we're in a worse off situation. So when you have, just in short, when you have a Moshe Rabbeinu who's leading Klal Yisrael, it's not necessary to have those Mishmar. And it could be one or two reasons. Either because it's self-understood, or because it's self-imposed. It's not the same thing. Self-understood means you understand that it's different. I know we have over here no Kohanim. You have a Levi. Okay? I'm not jealous of Mel Seltzer because he's a Levi. You know why? What?
Jealous of him.
Okay. Well, why am I not jealous? Because he's a Levi. I'm not a Levi. That's all. That's not. It's not even up for grabs. You can only be jealous of something if you can, in your wild imagination, somehow relate to that kind of an idea. When we have it clear, you have a Moshe Rabbeinu, we have an understanding of accounting, and I just want to bring this into the point of accounting. The most inhumane thing, I think, that goes down in history that the Germans did. I'm not talking about the most treacherous, was they gave everybody a number. You're a number. The difference between you and you is you're number 463 and you're number 464. That's the only difference. In England, if somebody I know that he was a shaykhit and he was put out of, he lost his job. And the word which I heard that the way this is explained in English is that you are redundant. Right? Is that how they say it? That's the most horrible thing I ever heard. Right? You are redundant? That's like a very nothing. What?
No longer required. You're no longer needed for requirements.
Yeah, redundant means that there's superfluous. There's no place. You don't. We don't need your services. That doesn't make you redundant. Redundant means been there, done that already. You have nothing to contribute to society, right? That's a pretty awful thing to say about a person, that you're redundant. I'm not, maybe that's a different usage of the word. That's not really what they meant.
They've actually, they try and switch it up. Instead of making somebody redundant, they make the position redundant, rendering you your position unplayable.
Okay.
So it's like the switch up at
okay, but that's okay. I'm happy.
It's still.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that it's a very demoralizing statement. Your amendment reminds me when I was a little kid. It was a cartoon called Ziggy. That's a cartoon character, and he died in one of the cartoons, and he came up to the pearly gates, and the administering angel looked down at him and said, "We lost your file." Okay, the position doesn't exist anymore. Where does that put you? You know what I mean? That's we lost your file. Okay.
Would you excuse me, Rabbi?
Okay. Anyways, the point I just want to emphasize, that we have to be aware of our weaknesses. And if we're aware of our weaknesses, sometimes the best thing is to have those fences. And sometimes when we're aware of our weaknesses, then we don't need to be feathered by those rules and regulations, and we can get along together. This is a lacuna which people have the natural tendency to abuse. But we're speaking about in Ruchnius also. There are some people who say, if he's doing this, I want to do this. He's learning Daf Yomi, I should learn Daf Yomi. Maybe you should know what you're supposed to learn. Why is everybody supposed to do the same thing? On the contrary, everybody's supposed to do something else. And if you realize the idea of our ability to be an individual, and everyone has their own place, so then we would understand that the counting wouldn't need Lebeis HaVoisam, because each person would understand exactly what he's supposed to do. This is just at the door when you have again, use examples that when I was a kid. So those of you who didn't have the displeasure of playing baseball or whatever you played soccer or whatever it was, cricket I know nothing about. I know that, I say, Baruch Hashem, they can make me English, but whatever it is, that you go to the playing field, and it was always a given. The same kids play together, it was a given. This guy has this position, this guy's the goalie, this guy's the defense, and there's some guys who their position is what's called lo mukdar, right? So then depending on the situation that arises, we'll figure out where to stick him or who to stick with him. Whichever one you want to choose, whatever it has to be. But there's some people who have it clear what their position in life is. Our job is to find out where our strengths are, and we should be able, Mitzvah Hashem, to be counted on to fulfill our position. That's, I think, one of the ideas of counting. But counting in Ruchnius, as the Sfarim say, counting in Ruchnius gives chashivas to each individual. Whereas in counting in Gashmias, it obliterates the Chashivas of each individual. So we should be Zaycha Mitzvah Hashem that we should have Mitzvah the ultimate counting, Baspaya Meira, that we should be able to come back and do the service in the base of Rippish.
Right.